I've done some previous videos on why you should only use channels 1, 6 and 11 when you're using a 2.4 gig spectrum. Now, the reason for that is the channel width that we use is 20 meg, but the channel designation is only 5 meg apart. So if you use every single channel number, there's a lot of overlap. So the only non-interfering channels that you can use is 1, 6 and 11. Now, there's still many devices out there that do use all the channels in between. They shouldn't, but they do, and a lot of home routers do that sort of thing. And I found out that the Powerwall internally uses it. The Powerwall's got its own AP that the power meter connects to, and I've noticed that it was changing channel all the time, very frequently, and to all the channels, not just 1, 6 and 11. So what I did a packet capture of this and a spectrum capture so I could see what was actually going on. And I also, before I did that, I logged just the behavior of it over a couple of weeks just to see how much it does change. So I'll go through all that now. Okay, here's the channels that the Powerwall was on over the last week. And you can see it's all over the place. So it goes from channel 1 to 8, back to 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 4, up and down a bit here, nothing for a while here, up and down here. It's all over the place. Now, I did the capture that I spoke of last night, and just before I started the capture about here, the most recent channels that changed to were 2 and 3. So I set the adapters to channel 1, 2 and 3, and I caught this channel change here, which is what we'll look at. To do the actual packet capturing and spectrum monitoring, I used Kali Linux for the packet capturing, and I used Wi-Fi with Channelizer on Windows to do the spectrum analyzer. So here we've just got the Wi-Fi with, it's a MacBook, but the VM's running. So I've got the Wi-Fi running here and Wireshark running here once the adapters have been put into monitor mode. Now, to capture multiple channels at once, I use 3 adapters, which for general 2.4 gig capturing, I'd use channels 1, 6 and 11 because that's what you're supposed to use in your transmissions. But because of this thing, I had a hunch that it would, basically a guess really, that it would go from channel 1 to 3 since it was doing a bit of that before. So I just set these to channel 1, 2 and 3 to make sure I captured on its channel. But it also shows how you can capture frames from an adjacent channel because of the overlap that they have. So they're the devices I used to capture, and yeah, here's just a demo spectrum of where it is now, and packet capture running of nothing in particular at the moment. But they're just VMs running the software that I need to do the captures the way I like to do them. I've just zoomed in a bit on that area to see exactly what happened, and you can see it was on 1 for a bit, then went up to 3, then it bounced around between 1 and 3 for a little bit, then went back to 1. So I've captured all that, and I'll have a look at that. Okay, this first jump that happened from channel 1 to 3, I found that in the spectrum analyzer here. So it happened just after 4:15 in the morning. And you can see there's actually some downtime between there of at least a minute. So during that minute there was no comms happening through the Wi-Fi there. The other one, when it came back down to channel 1, that was a bit later. So if you just scroll a bit later, you see it there, same sort of thing. It goes from channel 3 back to 1. And it's all this data here that I'm talking about. You can see it quite clearly on channel 3, then the gap again. Because what would have happened is the AP in the Powerwall would have gone from channel 3 to 1 and left the meter, which is the wireless client, just hanging there until it probed around and found it again on channel 1 and continued. And you can see that channel 3 overlaps channel 1, 2, 4 and 5. It's a mess. It shouldn't be there. It should only be on channels 1, 6 and 11. These are some other things on 6 and 11 just working nicely in the neighbourhood. So that's layer 1, the RF layer. Now here's the packet capture while it's on channel 1, and what I've done there is I've just set a column where the current channel is in the details to show the current channel here. So you can see easily it's on channel 1. Now this red pine, that's the actual Powerwall acting as the AP, and the Neurio device is the power meter. So you see it's constantly sending data up to it. Now it's on channel 1 and it's there and everything's happy for now. Now we see these beacon frames coming out. That's the Powerwall there, that I think it's Tesla Energy Gateway, and everything's going along. Now, a bit down the track, we see this sort of thing. We see a deoff, or a couple of them actually. So the Powerwall is telling the Neurio to deauthenticate. It's kicking it off basically. Now, if we look at the time here in seconds, 4532. Okay, if you look for beacons from the Powerwall, which is the AP, you see around this time, 4532, there's beacons, but the beacons kind of disappear. Now, all these authentications, that's the Neurio trying to get back on, but it's not having much luck. Probe request, now it's looking for it. Basically, the Neurio device is lost. Now, this Redpine device starts off, probe request, okay. The Redpine itself, that's the Powerwall, is now sending its own probe requests. So it's looking for AP, so it's suddenly switched to being a wireless client as opposed to an AP. So it does that for a bit, and then finally, eventually, it starts broadcasting again. Okay, so finally down here, it starts sending out beacons again, this time on channel 3. Now, the time between that, what was our one? It's now 4613. When it last sent a beacon, where were we? 45. I mean, we're talking over a minute. So it was over a minute there before it started transmitting again, this time on channel 3. So during that time, the Neurio device, which is a Wi-Fi client of the Powerwall acting as an AP, was basically stranded. Okay, and that's that right there. Now what happened then when it was on channel 3 was not much really. The AP, the Redpine Powerwall AP, was just sending beacons out on channel 3 for a long time, and there's no Neurio device to be seen. Okay, then finally it sends a deauth anyway. Now the Neurio is asking for where it is, and it's there, and it sends deauths, and yeah, it mucks around a bit. Neurio's looking around and it sees it. So it says, okay, I want to authenticate, blah, 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 probe requests, this, that, the other. It's trying. Now, if you get to where the Powerwall starts transmitting beacons again, if I can find them. Beacons, here we go. Finally, Redpine is sending some beacons out, starting here. And we're back on channel 1 now. And now that it's on channel 1, after a little bit of time, where are we? You'll see the Neurio device join up. There it is. I just saw it. Okay, here comes the Neurio again. Now it's back on channel 1. So it's doing its probe request, probe response, finding it, blah, blah, blah. You know, the usual stuff. Authentication, the 4-way handshake, which I didn't capture all of it, but it would have done it. And then it's back in action again. So back on channel 1, we see data frames. And there it is. So it didn't like being on channel 3. I can't blame it really. But that delay was significant. If we look at that back on the spectrum between that time, we can see here's the data that was happening on channel 3, and then when it all went bloody pear-shaped, it was for about a minute and a half before it continued on channel 1. So you can see it's just problematic. And that's what happens when wireless isn't implemented properly. Now, I'm not just trying to pick on Powerwalls here, because there's a lot of consumer devices that put wireless in for some function with no consideration of the wireless engineering involved. So you get things like that I just showed. Hopefully it will get better over time as people get more knowledgeable with how wireless actually works.